Hi, everyone, and welcome to our March webinar. As we all know, this has been a blistering winter in many parts of North America, but that doesn't mean that 2019 crop planning isn't heating up. Spring is just around the corner, and today we want to help you kick off the year right by sharing some key ways that you can use your smartphone this crop season to save you time and money, not to mention headaches. Let's get started. Today's subject matter experts are Paul Overby and Kevin Pattison. Paul is the owner of Verity Plus, a North Dakota ag retailer that offers value-added farm management solutions. Paul has been selling Trimble Ag software since 2007, and since then he has helped hundreds of farmers and ag equipment technicians from North and South Dakota and Minnesota with precision ag solutions that drive profitability. We're in good hands today because Paul also spent a few years as a farm business management instructor at a state college in North Dakota. He also farms with his wife Diane near Wolford, North Dakota. So let's get started now as Paul walks us through these really key and pretty simple but very effective ways that you can use your smartphone this crop season to make farm management a whole lot easier. Paul, first, can you tell us why is this topic so important? Most people these days are glued to their phones, and farmers are no exception. But aside from texting and making phone calls, is there quite a lot more that farmers could be doing to actually manage farm work and track field records on their mobile device?
One of the biggest challenges of farming for years has been accurate record keeping. And when I worked with farm business management program, that was always a challenge, working with farmers, trying to get them to update their records. And usually it was a matter of shuffling through all kinds of various pieces of information, trying to find the right thing. And now we have the technology available, and it's right in your hand. It can either your phone or your tablet, and you can get that recorded right there, and you have it, and then you can use it down the road for other purposes.
Okay, sounds good. And how do you use your phone? How do you use the mobile app in farming?
We use it for a variety of things. Actually, right now I'm using it because if I'm on the road and talking with the seed dealer or trying to make some pre-buy decisions, I got a deadline on the road for prepay for chemical the other day, and I didn't have my computer handy, but I had my tablet handy, and so I could immediately look up and see how many acres of the crop I was planning on putting in. I think it was field peas for 2019. And so even now, planning for 2019, it's been a useful tool to have on the road to be able to find that information out. As we move into the growing season, the ability to record what you're seeding, the rate of seeding, all of those types of pieces of information right when it's happening, as opposed to trying to remember it later when you're tired and you really can't keep track of what field you were in when. It's just kind of a peace of mind thing when you can have your information done right away, as opposed to waiting until it gets to be June and then you're trying to reconstruct a record just because you didn't have a tool with that you could write it down, such as a mobile app, or you just decided not to do it.
Paul, you mentioned that it provides peace of mind, which is important, but you're also calling out some of the important reasons farmers need accurate records, which you're saying they're more likely to get using the mobile app.
Well, of course, because especially, so the other place that we use it, seeding, you could probably kind of reconstruct a record, but the other place I've made extensive use of it is in recording chemical applications. And for me, that's particularly important because we're applying the chemicals that we need and only what we need on different fields. And so every field has its own prescription. It might be the same chemical, but the rate might change as I move from field to field of chemical. I might add a little bit more in one field, a little bit less in another. And so in order for me to accurately record what chemicals and how much went where, it's important to get it recorded at the time, because there's no way to remember, did I put a quarter of a pint on that field, or a third of a pint on that field, or a half a pint on that field 30 days later, trying to remember it. You just can't.
Is accurate record keeping becoming even more important in farming? And do you expect this trend will continue into the future?
Well, let's go back to just the seeding thing in the
Mhm.
first place, because that has two main implications that farmers know that's coming at them. In at least in the United States, we have crop insurance reporting deadlines and reporting to the USDA FSA agency, and those records have to be accurate. Uh, and so by the end of June, both of those agencies want those numbers into them, and they should match. It should be the
Mhm.
same set of numbers. So if a person doesn't keep track of what they're seeding as they're going along, then come June, you're sitting down with a pile of maps and scattered pieces of note paper trying to figure out what it was, how many acres you actually seeded. If you do it by using your app, when you get done, most of the monitors will tell you how many acres you've covered, and you can plug that in, which is important for financial information. But depending upon the program you're using, you can actually figure out the area that's covered as well.
Mhm.
And that's a second information, because that's the acres that need to get reported to FSA and the insurance company.
So, would you say record keeping would be one of the top ways that you're getting value from using the mobile app today?
I think that's the most critical.
Okay.
The place. So I mentioned the prescriptions by field, and so that's the other place that I've really been pushing the app, is for field scouting for weeds prior to spraying. So my typical spraying season, I'll try to be out in a field a day, preferably two, but at least a day ahead of time, and scouting it. And we'll go to various parts of the field, and for areas of interest that maybe there's a particular weed or a high density patch of weeds or things like that, we'll actually take a picture as well. And then by the time I'm done scouting the field, I'll usually have a pretty good idea of what chemistries I should use and how much of each. There's a couple of reasons for doing that. One, from a standpoint of long-term management, I want to be applying the chemistries that are important for controlling the weeds, and no more or no less, so that I don't
Mhm.
build up weed resistance over time.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then the second reason is from a cost savings. If I don't need to apply a $20 an acre chemical, and instead I can use a combination of some generics that I can buy for maybe $10 or $12 total, I know that, and I could
Mhm.
save myself $10 to $12 an acre just by scouting ahead of time and only using the chemistries that I need.
And what about the restricted entry alerts? Do you use the app for in this way?
I have not, because it's just been myself and my wife farming, and so I
Okay.
don't have employees. However, I think that is for I do have do know farmers that have multiple employees, and this restricted entry interval is actually an important thing, and it's kind of one of those regulatory issues that's starting to come to the surface. And so there's a couple of things that in the states, or at least in North Dakota, every person is supposed to have with them, and that's the labels of the chemicals that they're spraying,
Mhm.
and a record of when and where they put it on, and particularly for things like reentry intervals. So if I have a hired man, if I'm an employer that has enough employees, so I've got a hired man spraying, those become important from a regulatory standpoint.
Mhm. Mm.
Employees need to know what's been sprayed and where, so that you don't send somebody out to scout a field or do something in a field and it turns out it was just sprayed 12 hours ago, and the REI is 24 to 48 hours.
So that's really important for safety reasons.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And how do you use your phone to do that? Like, how does it actually work?
So when a person records the chemicals, one of the options of inputting the chemical into the database that goes with the app is putting in the re-entry interval into it.
Okay.
It has to be entered in most cases by the producer when they first put in their chemistries.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Let's go through some other ways that you're going to be using the app this spring.
So one of the fun things we're using the scouting app for is recording how our cover crops are growing. So it's in the fall of the year after they've been planted, recording how they've come up and seeing where the growth progress of them. And then again in the springtime now, I'm looking forward to this year. We planted some cover crops that theoretically should overwinter, and so we'll be going back out to some of those areas and seeing if they in fact did overwinter underneath our 1.5 feet of snow. Which actually should have protected them. So maybe they actually did make it. But the other thing I use the app for, which not everybody has cattle, but we have we rent out our pasture to a nephew to graze his cattle on it, and we're in a twice over rotational grazing system. And it also has some government support with it, and so they want us to record the growth and the regrowth of the grass as we're moving the cattle from cell to cell. And so we use it for that, to record when we're moving the livestock, and then also what the condition of the grass is as we do that. And again, that's another, because it is government funded, it's important to record it, because they want to know, did we do what we said we were going to do? And so they want a timeline of when the animals were moved from cell to cell, as well as some representative pictures of the grass growth. And the other thing that they're keeping track of is where we put mineral blocks, the idea being to have the mineral blocks in varied locations so the cattle don't tromp down the vegetation to a point where it damages it by having it in the same place all the time.
Right. Tell me a bit about the value of tracking weather with your phone.
But let me comment on the weather just a little bit. So one of the other important parts with the chemical record is the weather. It's almost mandatory that you record the temperature, the humidity, and the wind speed and direction. It's not in North Dakota, it's not mandatory except for restricted chemicals. However, if there's a spray drift issue and this whole dicamba on soybeans thing is kind of blowing up around the country, it really helps if you know what day you sprayed a chemical like dicamba, what the humidity was, what the wind direction was, what the temperature was, so that should somebody in the neighborhood be complaining about drift, you can go back to your records and go, wasn't me. So
right. Okay.
From a liability standpoint, having, and the nice thing about the app is you don't have to click on another app to find out what the weather is. It puts it in. It's right there as part of your spraying record.
In Trimble Ag Mobile.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Right. So it's not an extra step.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. And then it saves it, and as it reports, then it shows up in the report on the dashboard, or you can use the app to go back and look that way too.
Exactly. And
I guess with the app, that's the other nice thing about the app, carrying it with you, is I can go back and look at field operations, like, well, when did I plant that field? And again, if I've got my app, my phone or tablet with, I can look it up quickly. I don't have to go to the web and open up the dashboard. I can just pop up the fields and scroll through, and maybe I put my filter on just the crops, and I can go back and look and see what days I sprayed them or what days I planted them, things like that.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point about just the convenience of having that information right with you. What are some occasions when you notice that that's helpful?
This was actually had to do with varieties, but there was a discussion on what varieties were planted, and couldn't remember it off the top of my head, but I didn't beat myself up too much looking for it because I knew I had it in my app. So I just looked it up. So, saved a lot of hair pulling or head scratching. I don't have a lot of hair left to pull out. So.
Tell me another way you're using the app this crop season.
I guess the other place that we have used it is recording, back to field recording or record keeping. That is harvest. We have recorded, the whole harvest operation goes into the app. We have the yield monitor maps as well, but the who, what, where, when, and how much has been entered in through the app.
Okay, I had that as a note here, like just to take us through that. I know we're kind of initially going to talk about spring, but can you sort of take us through harvest and how you're using the map, like at what stage and for what tasks?
Well, and the biggest thing, again, back to record keeping, mm-hmm. is being able to have something that's convenient to record the operation right there as you're doing it, as opposed to waiting until later. And so it's capturing the time in the field and all of those, the people in the field. What I haven't pushed it yet, which it's an option in there, and that gets at the question you asked, it is using it to put the grain into the bin, so to speak, mm-hmm. and recording that. I'm still doing that on a piece of paper, which I had a little panic this fall trying to find where it was my piece of paper had gone to, and so it's like, I have an app for this. Why am I not using it?
Are you thinking about maybe starting to do that next year?
Oh yeah. It's that's the thing for not just me, but for everybody, and that is, and this is what I tell farmers actually when I train them or they ask me, and that is pick the most important stuff, the stuff that you're struggling with the most. Learn how to do that, do it well, so that's you don't have to think about it, and then pick the next thing. And so I'm kind of that. Exactly. You're hearing me talk about the next things that I want to do because I know the app has the capability of doing it, and I just haven't done it yet.
Paul, you've made a good point about how farmers should remember that using the app, it's a natural progression, and that involves using it more and more each year in a way that works right for you.
When I train it, I'll go through everything, but I usually back up and focus on the things that are the most critical to get a handle on. So once they learn the field record keeping process, mm-hmm. then it's pretty easy to transition to the next type of field record keeping process because you're already doing it. And this is, it's not just the farmer, but if they're going to make this work, they're going to have their employees doing it as well. And so they need to learn a process well enough so that they can actually teach an employee if they have employees or other family members.
Yeah.
So, because otherwise you're just kind of missing another piece again.
Yeah, exactly. Do you use your phone to monitor crop health imagery at all?
So the crop health imagery, I have played around with it a little bit in 2018, but I'm thinking that is going to be useful in 2019 also to add to the scouting. So as we're looking at a particular vegetation map, the ability to go back into the field and look and see what's going on. It will be helpful back to the cover crops. We have done some trial work with cover crops where we planted parts of the field, but not all of the field. And so that vegetation health index will be helpful for that. And then the ability to actually have the app open and see where you are relative to the colors or to the vegetation index as you're scouting the field will be incredibly helpful. So I'm looking forward to trying that out this coming year.
Okay, so that basically you can kind of see on your phone a reflection of vegetative health in the field, and then you sort of know where to look. You know where to scout.
Well, it'll have your GPS because it's georeferenced. Mm-hmm. You'll be able to see your position relative to the vegetation index.
Farmers, like all of us, are using their phones for talking and texting and all other uses. But what's your estimate, Paul, on how many are actually using it for field record keeping and some of the ways that you've outlined today?
I don't know, but I don't think the number is as high as it could be.
Yeah.
And part of the problem is information overload. There are so many apps out there. You look through a farm magazine or, whatever you get on whatever Twitter has managed to feed in your thing. And there's a lot of apps out there. And I have talked to more than a few farmers who have said, it's such a mess. I've looked at this one and I've looked at that one, and none of them really seem to do everything I want to do. And I'm not going to waste my time learning how to do something and find out that 2 years later, the company's out of business. And so they're not even trying. Now there's, some of the more aggressive guys are, but yeah, it's a problem. It's an overload type of thing. And actually for me, that's a kind of a sales line in terms of, Trimble's been around for a long time, and it's going to be around for a long time. So this isn't a company that's dependent on keeping some vulture capitalist happy by how much money they can turn in 30 days or something like that.
Paul, how will this move toward more food traceability impact farmers' use of their mobile app and some of the other software tools that can improve the integrity of their field records?
The food companies are moving more into voluntary association. Okay? And right now I'm involved in a program with General Mills through Patterson Grain Corporation, through Patterson Grain. And so we're raising oats for General Mills as part of a sustainability initiative that General Mills is carrying out. As a result of that, they want to know on every field we've planted that we are going to plant to oats, what we have done on that field for the past 3 years.
Oh.
Now, when I started rebuilding my records, I found some gaps, but they were pretty good. And I wasn't sifting through a bunch of shoe boxes trying to find information. I usually knew what had happened. It didn't get recorded, say, 3 years ago.
Oh.
But so what's happening is the food industry is moving in the direction of wanting sustainability, or regenerative ag is what actually General Mills is after. It isn't so much, so they want to see that farmers are working towards continuously reducing chemicals, reducing fertilizer, reducing tillage operations, and still producing a quality product.
Okay.
That's a challenge. And if you have a good program that you've designed to do that, then the record keeping follows pretty closely, because in order to prove that it's working, you have to have the record keeping.
Yeah.
So for example, on our farm, we started doing no-till and prescription zone management in 2005.
Okay.
So we started down that path, a fairly long time ago. But now we have the ability, between yield maps and imagery and our field record keeping, to be able to look at all parts of our field and see what's working and what isn't working. And are we still getting yields? Are we still getting the quality in terms of, say, like protein or test weight, things like that, or diseases? And at the same time, we're starting to push the curve on reducing our fertilizer inputs. I mentioned the chemist, the scouting, the chemicals and stuff like that. That fits into that same mindset of using only what we need and no more. And so all of that fits together. Our soil testing, which I haven't used the app for, I'm still using the old mobile package, but the app will allow for soil testing in different parts of the field. And all of those pieces start fitting together to provide General Mills with the information that they need. Field records are going to be key for people who want to sell into the premium ag markets. That will include the seeding information, the fertility information, the chemical information, as well as harvest operations and any other tillage or operations that you might have to do in the field. So the ultimate goal is to reduce the carbon footprint of the farm operation.
Right. And so accurate data is just going to be, is going to be really a key part of that.
If you're going to be in those programs, you're going to have to learn how to keep good records. And it's, you're looking at anywhere from 25 to 50 cents per bushel premiums to be in them. So
it's worth it.
Everybody has to evaluate whether that's worth it. But the thing is the record keeping with things like the mobile app are so easy. It's not like it's going to cost you a lot of time or effort to do the record keeping if you just use an app like the Trimble mobile app.
That's great, Paul. Thank you for taking us through these key ways that farmers can use their apps to simplify farming this spring and improve the accuracy of their field records. Paul touched on some of the key features in Trimble Ag Mobile. And before wrapping up, I'd like to share a bit more information about how this powerful app and some of the ways that it can be used is really transforming farmers' daily workflow. Trimble Ag Mobile allows farmers to input, access, and share records from field images to crop scouting reports in real time from any mobile device. It works on both Apple and Android devices, and it's constantly being upgraded with the latest enhancements to Trimble Ag software. Paul talked about field record keeping, scouting, weather. Now I'd like to turn it over to Kevin Pattison to walk us through another exciting feature on Trimble Ag Mobile, work orders. Kevin?
As far as creating the work orders, there's three main ways to go and do that. One would be from the work orders tab itself. So there is a plus in the top right here. If I click that, it's going to open the window. I can click on add fields and I can go and select one or more fields that I want to apply this to. So I could pick these two fields. As far as a task type, if I'm doing something just really basic, I could just do like a scouting task. I'm just going to leave the operation as unknown for now. I'm going to assign someone to it, and assign myself to that, and set a window of between today and the 8th that I want to do that job, and then save that job out. So what's happened now is it's created 3 tasks, or 2 tasks, one for each of those fields that I created. Those 2 tasks were created together. So the nice thing about this is I can come in and I can still make comments and add more details to it, and it'll keep all of that data that was part of that group. So there's both those fields. When I go to save it, it'll ask if I want to update this for all of the work orders that were part of that group or just this individual one. So if I hit yes, both of those work orders will get those new comments and changes. So if you're working on a large farm and you're doing a spray recommendation across 20 fields, and you suddenly have to change products or change a rate, you can make those changes without having to go back and modify every single record. Because they're created as a group, you can make modifications en masse across all of those items. But once they're started, then they become their own record. So it really streamlines managing this for a whole bunch of different fields at the same time. The second way to create work orders is actually from the field list screen. So one of the things I could do is filter by a certain crop, and then say I want to do a job for these ones. I could select multiple fields across the left and then use the create work order button from there. So that's another quick way to create the work order. And the third way to do it is using the map itself. So from here, I can see the map, I can see all the boundaries. They're color coded by crop. If I wanted to go do something on just the barley fields, I could click in the top right and say select fields, and then I can touch the fields that I'd like to do something to, and then you can say create work order. So then at that point, I could create a new task. So whether it's, let's just do a quick spraying task again. Select spraying, go to materials. I'm just going to do the same tank mix I did last time. Assign a vehicle, sprayer number 1, assign an operator, sprayer guy, oops. And go back, and I'm not going to put any weather restrictions, but just save that. And that's gone and created those work orders for that particular, those 2 fields. So if I go back to the work orders tab, I'll see those 2 spraying events that were set for today in the system. So really quick way to create a lot of jobs for a lot of fields, for a lot of different activities really quickly. So you can see once you get that big, the filters at the top are going to become more critical to allow this to be kind of managed by the people to see what they need to do.
Thanks, Kevin and Paul, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. If you have any questions on this, please let us know. We're happy to help or provide a one-on-one demo so you can see firsthand how the app could be used in your operation. Please don't hesitate to reach out by email or by phone. The contact information is on the screen. Also, make sure to come back for our April webinar, where we'll give you a heads up on the topic later this month through our website, in our newsletters, and via social media. Thanks again, and see you back here in April.